right up in a little town called Wellsboro, and it's known as, that area right there is known as the Canyon, or the Landing. It's a real pretty little valley, and it's a nice, the Shenandoah River runs down through it. Yeah. I'm getting my skates mixed up. The Susquehanna River runs right down through the area. The first one, as far as the pasture manifest, just shows the husband, whose name is Lewis. It shows a wife and 4 children. Of those 4 children, there were 3 boys and a girl. The girl's name is Margaret. On the 1820 census, she doesn't show up in the family at all because she's married at that time. She's married to a nice common American name or English name of a guy by the name of Benjamin Smith. And later on, right after the Civil War, she moved from Pennsylvania. She moved out to Kansas. Her sons had started the store out in Kansas, and apparently she lived there and she died in Kansas. That particular branch of the family, I've not traced Margaret at all. Now, of the three boys there's a Frederick and a Rudolph. Now, the other son, I do not know his name. He's just out there floating in the air right now. Hopefully somebody will be able to trace him and be able to give us that information. So, Frederick Christenot married Seth Sanford. She was from Connecticut. They were married in Pennsylvania. They had 4 or 5 children there in Pennsylvania. Then they moved from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin. Seth died in a little town called Baraboo, Wisconsin, and she's buried there. Now, I think of the children they had, and I'll have to dig in my record a little more, the 4 other girls that they had died within a year or less than a year of being born. They had one daughter named Sarah that was born in 1836. She died later in that same year, 1836. 1839, they had another daughter. They named her Sarah. She died in 1839. And then I think about 1841, they had a girl named Mary, and she died in the same year. So, and then later on, they've got several other children. Of those children out of Frederick's, there's Charles, where it's most of the progenitors have come from. Came to Montana in 1866. Now, his brother Benjamin Frederick came either earlier than that or at approximately the same time. It said in the 1870 census is when he shows up here in Montana. At that time, Frederick is also out here, and he has a second wife named Margaret. And they lived in Adobe Town, and they show up in the 1870 census. The one printout I have says that Frederick died in Butte, and I don't know if he's buried in Butte. Could possibly be so. Margaret, I have nothing on her, because 1880 census, I don't think she shows up in the 1880 census, so I don't know what happened. Whether after Frederick died, whether she went back east or what happened. Now, Rudolph stayed in Pennsylvania, had a farm there in Wellsboro. I think he had 4 sons. 2 of the sons were killed in the Civil War. There's a Robert G. and a James A. are his 2 sons that were died during the Civil War. Now, there's a printed record showing that 3 Christenots were supposed to have enlisted in the Bucktail Brigade there in Pennsylvania. There's also a Gilbert R. Some people are trying to tell me that Robert and Gilbert are the same individual. But the printout I have, or one of them, just shows Robert as being a sergeant, Gilbert and James as being corporals. So Gilbert's still floating out there. I've not identified him to see if he's the same individual or what, but he's a floater. Now, to get back to Charles Frederick, his first wife was Keziah Strang. She died in 1864, and he had 3 children from that marriage. There was a Henry, a Maddie, and an Emma. Those children did not come to Montana with their dad. They were raised in Illinois by their grandparents and their aunts and uncles on the Strang family on that side of the family. Now, to give you how, when you start doing genealogy, you've got all these little parts out there and you sort of try to tie them in. Well, I was going through a record which gives you their Social Security listings of people who have received Social Security benefits and died. On that listing of the Christenots, if I go through that, the first one on top of that list is Arthur Christenot, which is a brother to Johnny and Henry and Willie and Nettie, and Marjorie, who are here today. When I get down through that line, all of a sudden I find a Bernard Christenot and a Gretchen Christenot who were living in Houston, Texas. One died in 1979, another one died in 1980. My daughter, Maria, happened to be living in Houston with her husband, so she was able to trace them down. And she was able to find the death certificate, the obituary, and finds out this Bernard is the son of Henry, who is Charles's first son. So we've been able to tie that line in. Now there, if you run into Christenot, it's going to be a family relative of some way. But what I like to do is identify the people here today and the lines they're from, if I can possibly do it, so you'll know who they are. Later, after you eat, what we like to do, and after Mick has made his presentation, what we like to do is have the families that are here. Why certain families come up or give them a place here where we can take pictures and identify that particular line and let other people get a picture of the families that are here. Now, of the 8 children that were living of Charles and Martha, I do not have any representative here from the Patrick line, not unless somebody did. Did anyone come from Whitehall or any of the Patricks or any of those people? And also from the Newton line. I think I don't have anybody from that particular line. But we're going to try to contact him, get pictures from him, and put it into a book. And hopefully, what I'd like to try to do is get this book put together and published by about the 1st of October. Just give me a chance to do the histories of the various family lines and get pictures from those people and put them together. And what I have right now, the individual, there's a book back here. You look at it. This friend of mine. This is a book on his grandfather, and he did this for his grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. There's a picture in there of his grandparents and then his aunts. There's 5 girls in that family. And this is what the type of history I'm trying to do, just to give you an idea of what I'd like to try to publish. So we get to know the families, where they were raised, what they've done for occupations, and so you know you do have some other friends, not other friends, but other families. This the Christenots, to give you an idea, Hattie was born in 1867, and none of these families have got together. There's never been a family reunion with all of the brothers and sisters and their descendants. This is what we're trying to do now. Still some of them are still alive, the older uncles and relatives, and being able to tie them down and know who the families are. Okay, now, to give you a little idea, we have Marion Graves and her daughter are here from New York State. Marion, would you stand, please? Now, Marion is a descendant from Rudolph's family line, which was Frederick's brother. Now, the Bucktail Brigade was formed in Pennsylvania at the time the Civil War started, and this is where the three Christenots were supposed to have joined. You go ahead and let you sit down there, Marion. But when we started doing this genealogy, I did get Marion's address, her name like this. I wrote to her, and she's been very cooperative in writing back, and sending pictures, and trying to learn more about the Christenots. In the Christenot line, I think on that particular site on Rudolph, I don't think there's one living Christenot that I know of right now is James, who lives in Washington, D.C. And we've written to him. The mail must go through because it's never returned postage mail, but he hasn't answered anything on it. And so we hopefully can trace out the last of that line and being able to identify him. As I was saying about this Bucktail Brigade, they formed this thing was right at the start of the Civil War in 1861. They came into Tioga County in the Wellsboro area. They formed a brigade from a lot of the local people. And like I said, the 3 Christenots were in it. And I have copies of the Civil War records of both Robert and James. What little bit there is in the records on those. And there's also a bunch of the old payroll records with this Gilbert. Now, to give you how small the world can get, last summer we have a friend of ours in California. Their daughter was back in Washington, D.C. working the summer on an intern program at the National Archives. Her job was to transcribe a lot of these Civil War records into computer systems. So I wrote her and told her I'd like to see Tracy Christenot. So she was able to give me everything that she had on Charles Frederick. And she Xeroxed everything that was in the records, all the widow pensions, everything that was filed there. I have a copy of that. She also gave me everything she had on Gilbert and also on James and also Robert. So those things will be available to look at a little later on. But while she is up there, she decided just before the end of the summer to go up to wasn't Gettysburg. There's one of the little areas there where they staged these reenactments of the Civil War battles. So she went up on a Saturday. There's 1,000 blue and gray up there doing this reenactment. And as they were coming off the field, there were 3 guys in union uniforms. And she asked them if she could have her picture taken with them. And they said, fine. So she had a picture, and they asked her where she's from. She said, California. And they said, well, what are you doing back there? And she told them. And she says, asked them what they were doing. They're doing a reenactment. And she said, well, she was doing this research on the Bucktail Brigade. These 3 individuals are direct descendants of the Bucktail Brigade. They were representing their uniforms and everything was what the Bucktail Brigade wore during the Civil War. So she talked to them and told them about the 2 Christenots that were in that brigade. And so they said the next week they were going to Antietam to put on another reenactment, and if she would come down, they would bring muster sheets and everything they had on the Bucktail Brigade. She went down the following weekend. They had the muster sheets and a bunch of paraphernalia from the brigade. Here was James, and here was Robert, listed in there. The one gentleman says, I have the old photographs, or daguerreotypes, I guess you call it, from the Civil War, pictures. He says, if you'll have your friend write to me, he says, I might have possibly the pictures of Robert and James in the Civil War uniforms. I've written to him everything yet. I've not got a response back from him, but hopefully I will. The description on their enlistment papers said that they were about 5'6", 5'6.5". They were blonde, blue-eyed, light complected. They were farmers. I always thought the Christenots were dark. All ones I knew got dark hair. And then after I started doing the genealogy, I find there's a lot of Scandinavian blood in there. So some of this red hair and these blue-eyed and blondes, I guess they're not natural. Should be in the family line. But,
we have to leave now?
No. But as I tried to identify the particular families, if they will stand up, and then we get a chance to know who they were. Now, all those that are in Hattie Kyle's line, would they please stand? To introduce myself here, part of this is Nick Schrager, right? Right? Okay, Nick Schrager. Schrager, okay, Schrager, okay.
We're related.
Okay, you know, if I mispronounce it. We have Georgie Thurber and Jack Norris, he's standing over here. Back here, and you'll see the genealogy sheets back here, and I have listed the families as near as I have possible on and part of their descendants. There's several other generations below that I'll have to try to get tonight or tomorrow and get them listed. Now, the other ones, I know there's a couple other drawers here earlier, and then they're out there. Yeah, they said they'd be here tonight and maybe tomorrow. Now, I think most of them live, probably here, still in Montana. The majority of them are still in Montana area, or are they out in Oregon? Oregon.
Oregon, most.
I think the next reunion should be in Oregon, because there's so much family out there.
We visit Montana though.
So, if you please sit down. Now, all those from Anna Swisher family that's here. Okay, we've got one. We should have, there's a couple more that are Langfords, which is part of the Swisher family. They'll be back here in a few minutes. They had to run into the motel room and pick up the camera and some other stuff.
That's my nephew.
Okay, that's Patrick, the one Rick for Patrick,
Yeah, Patrick is
and Jean, his mother. Yeah. They'll be here. So there are a few from the Swisher family.
There's very few alive. I'm Anna's grandmother. I mean, Anna was my grandmother.
Okay, great. Now, the Patrick line, I don't have people we were able to contact. The one person that was going to come here was Stephen Patrick, who lives in Ogden, Utah. They're in the process right now, next month, moving back to Oregon. They're going to, pardon?
I need to ask you, who is Patrick?
Okay, Mary Christenot married a John Patrick.
Okay, all
And
right.
in their descendants, they had, I think, 9 or 10 children. Now, Leonard was the oldest son, and Leonard's got 8 children, and the other one's down, trickle down from there. I do not have all the descendants on those. I was able to stop in Ogden from Stephen there. I picked up a computer disk with all the Patrick genealogy on it, so I'll be able to put that in and be able to add those people to the family and get some pictures from those.
I've just been referring to everybody by Christenot name, so when you say someone else.
Okay, when I'm trying to, there's the 5 girls that got married. These are, I'm trying to show their lines. Okay, and then Mary Patrick is the 3rd daughter. The 4th daughter was Amelia. She was married to Pendarvis, and then she was married to Jordan. Now, is Orville Jordan? He couldn't make it. Orville May. Now, I don't know, what's their age approximately? They're what, in their 80s? Now, they live in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah.
So, we will try to get their family, their history, and be able to identify them. Now, after Amelia, the first boy that was born was Nelson. If I got this right. Now, Nelson only lived for 2 years. And then he died. And then the next boy is George Christenot. Now, George is my grandfather. And all the descendants from George Christenot, would they please stand? Very active. So, George Christenot had, I think, 10 children. And every one of them are pretty prolific too. So, but here, you go ahead and take a seat. Now the next son was Frank Christenot. Now Frank Christenot had 2 wives. His first wife was Kate Russell, who was part Sioux Indian, and they were married in Ekalaka, Montana, about 1904, if I'm right, if I'm correct. Anybody else have a better date, let me know. Frank and Kate had 5 boys. Of those boys, only one of them lived to reach maturity. The other ones, 2 or 3 of them were killed when they were 11 or 12 years old. And a couple of them, I think one was 18, was killed in a rodeo accident. But of that one, the one that lived was Ralph Fletcher Christenot. Now, he lived in Rapid City, South Dakota. Now, of Ralph had 5 children. He's got 2 boys and 3 daughters. Yeah, correct. Now, Ralph Jr. goes by the name of Chris. He lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was supposed to come out here, but he's right in the process of transferring to another job and could not take the vacation time to be able to come out for it. Edward, the other son, both Ralph and Edward are retired from the Navy. Edward lives in Georgia, and his wife had back surgery here about the last 2 months, and she can't travel, so they did not come out. Now, Sally who is Ralph Sr.'s wife, is 85 years old. She had a minor heart attack or heart problem a week ago, and the doctor told her she couldn't travel, so the daughter of Alberta was not able to come out. They live in California. I have a picture of Alberta and Sally over here that we took, was it April? No, 2 months ago. They were at a wedding reception we had in California, so. And you can get a chance to look at her, and if you look at Alberta, and look at the same picture, you turn around and look at a picture of Martha Christenot, and you tell me that there's not some resemblance there. And I mean, this is 2 generations later. But it really amazes me is the different lines here, how much family resemblance of the various members are. Now, after that, Frank moved to Arkansas. He married Betty Lucas. Is that correct, John? Okay. Now, that family, there were 6 children, 3 boys. Of the 6 children, Aether died of cancer in what, 1968? No, excuse me, 1986? Yeah. 82? Earlier, whatever, the early part of 1980. Yeah. Yeah, 86, I guess. Okay. So now, of that Frank's second family, Johnny, will you stand up, please? There's going to be Marjorie, and Willie, and Nettie, and Henry's back there with that little bright light on the end of the camera. So, but they're all, Henry, Nettie, Marjorie, and Willie all live in Roswell, New Mexico. They were able to come up here. Johnny's in Pensacola, Florida. Johnny's another retired Navy, so the Navy sort of seeps in all these people from the inland like that want to go out and see what the ocean looks like. But Johnny and I were stationed together out in Hawaii in the 1960s, during Vietnam, trying to get there after that. So, you'll go ahead and take a seat, please. Now, the last brother is Fred Christenot. Fred Christenot lived here in the Bozeman area, Belgrade, Manhattan, right around the area. Orville's back here in the corner, right? Orville? Is Audrey here today?
Audrey's my sister. I don't know if she's here or not, but I thought she would be.
Yeah.
She's waiting for Wayne to pick her up.
Okay, Wayne is their son, and Wayne is coming up from Idaho Falls.
The car was there in the yard when we came by, so they'll be along.
Okay, they'll be here in a minute. So Fred, they had 4 children. The 2 of them that are here will be Orville and Audrey. And Wayne is Audrey's son now. Orville's got, I think, 4 daughters and 1 girl. You got four girls and a boy?
3 and 1.
3 girls.
3 girls, okay. Yeah, let's give or take 1 more at this time. So, and I know some of his children are here and their families. And the last girl of Charles and Martha was Clemma Christenot, and she married a Newton. The only Newton one I was able to find, one line like that, was Berta Newton's grandson. He lives out in Oregon, and there was no response. I talked to him on the phone, and he seemed to care less whether he wanted to come out here or not. But we will try to run the rest of these families down, and tie them down, their histories and everything. Now, if you would, I don't know what time you're going to serve, but 5:30, Nick?
5:30 for the food, but Clemma married Fat Briscoe first, Tim Briscoe, and then married Newton.
Did she have any? Did she
I
have
don't
any
know.
children, Briscoe? I didn't have anything information on that either. So, now the items for the silent auction are lined up here. What you do, you look at something like that. If you like to put a bid on it, you just write your bid on it, and then write your name and what you would like to bid for whatever particular item is. So you get a chance to look at this. Now, if you want to go through and look at some of the photos, I have some of the photographs from some of the families here. And we do have some photographs of family members that we do not know their names. If anybody should happen to know or happen to have the same picture in their album, would you please identify these people so we can get their pictures and things in this book that we're going to print. Now, like I said, the approximate cost on this book is going to be around $20 to $25. Now, as soon as I get the thing together, the pictures and the history, I'd be able to give you a hard figure on it. I would like to go ahead and give a sign-up sheet to those who are interested in it, and when I get ready like this, and I can go ahead and give you the figure for it, then at that time, I'd like you to go ahead and send me the money for it, so I can have it printed. I figure there's probably, and I can check me on this, I think there's probably, I'd say at least 400 descendants from Charles and Martha living today. At least that many. You know, I don't know what you think. Yeah, so I said to learn about, well, it was 146 that's pre-registered. There are a few of them that were unable to attend on that in the last minute.
He finally grew taller than me. I want, right. I want to explain a little bit about the silent auction. We have the items laid out here on the tables. There is a bid sheet in front of each item. On it, it says name and then your bid. You write down your name and the amount you want to bid. Then you can cruise by there 10 minutes later, and if somebody has bid over you, you can bid again. And we will continue this all through the evening until probably about 9 o'clock. We'll cut the bidding off. And then the high bidder at that time will receive the item as soon as they pay for it. And are we going to take a break right now? Is that what's next?
Visa or MasterCard? What I really like to do is give a thanks for Gwen for all the things she's done. She's mailed all these invitations to everybody. She's taken all the orders for the shirts, the caps. She's made the buttons. She's done a lot of efforts and all like that. If you just give her a hand for all work. Nick, did you want to go ahead and explain a little bit about what you like to plan for tomorrow and how you'd like to do that? Would you like to do that now or a little later?
Let's go ahead with the auction and food.
Okay. Okay, they're going to be serving here in about 15 minutes. So I think you get a chance, walk around the meeting tank, get the little people, introduce yourself, and you know they're all cousins, so you aren't going to be, just a line cousin like that.
I'm not going to tell you what side of the family gave this to me, but I can tell you that probably some of the best roasted chicken you ever eat in your life is sitting there in a pan waiting for you. So I would say you gather your bodies up and get in line, and all gentlemen and ladies that you are, being in the Christenot family, you won't push and shove, but I suggest you get after that chicken while it's hot and good. So enjoy your meal. I'll see you later.
Go ahead, Jason.
God damn it.
How you doing?
children up at Highlight Lake. And my son Jason's school teacher was there. And and she introduced me to her father. She said, this is my father, Christenot. Where's Chris at right now? He's around here somewhere.
Right here.
There's Christenot. And I said to him, and he can verify this, I guess. I said, gee, my dad told me that we had Christenots in the family. Now this has got to be, what, 20 years ago or better? And so we got talking. He said, yeah, I know my dad. There's my dad coming by the cameras now, and there's my son. And it turns out that Judy, the school teacher, Chris's daughter, was teaching her cousin but didn't know it. And the cousin didn't know that was the teacher. So Judy, if you haven't seen it, said hello to Jason. There he is. And that's how I found out about Christenot. And it took me 20 years then to get started to where we get to this point here now that I know something about it. But anyway, we're going to take a journey tonight. And I'll try to make this as interesting as possible. It is a history lesson. And what I want to do is put the Christenots in context with Montana and with Montana history. That's my interest. I think George has done a super job and is doing a great job on getting the genealogy, what I call the who begat who, when, and why. And he's going to get that put together for us. But I've been more interested in the history and Montana history. It's been a love of mine for a long time. And make no mistake about it, that the Christenots, Charles and Martha, and their father and mother, and Charles's brother Benjamin Frederick, or Frank as he's often called, are no doubt pioneers in the truest sense of Montana. They were into a whole variety of the Montana history and the westward experience, as you would call it. And even though they may not be as well known in history or as well documented in textbooks as others, there's no doubt about it, they were there, and you'll see why tonight. I have to say that this is not a complete story. I don't know all the story. All I can do is try to relate what I find the facts to be. And it's incomplete, and the more we study and the more we work together like we are tonight, the more we'll find more about it. The players, again, are Benjamin and Charles Christenot, brothers, which George has talked about, and their spouses and siblings and so forth. Charles was born in 34, 35, and so when he came out to Montana, he was on the order of 32 years old. Martha was born in 1846, and she's 20 years old when she comes to Montana in 1866. So I'd like somebody that's about 32 years old to stand. Who's somebody that's 32 years old, or close to it? A male. I need a male. I need a male of 32 years old. We have somebody that's 32 years old. Okay, let's go to 31 or let's go to 33. Come on, let's get in the spirit of this thing. We gotta get somebody that looks like Charles Christenot, because what I'm trying to show you is what this person looks like. Okay, right there. 36. Okay, Charles, how are you? Okay, now I need Martha. I need somebody that's about 20 years old. Who's 20 years old? Okay, there's Martha. Stand up. Okay, now Charles and Martha, you want to visualize these people, because that's what they, in age and chronological age, are leaving their homes and journeying across the country to get to Montana. We need one more player. We need a female, a girl that's about 3 years old. Is there anybody here that's about 3? Do we have somebody 3 or 4? Or... Okay, well, let's get them in here then. Martha, I have to ask you, this is kind of a personal question, because when you come across Montana, when you've just been married, but you're pregnant when you're coming to Montana, you're not, no, oh, okay, you're not pregnant. Okay, we have a 3-year-old here. Okay, there's Alice. That's Alice Wilton. That's Martha's daughter coming across Montana in 1866. And that's the family we have that we begin with. Now, Benjamin was here before them, and he's about 5 years older, so he's closer to, he's 32 or no, he's closer to 40. Do we have somebody that's about 40? We need a 40-year-old male. Do we have a 40-year-old male? There we go, there's Dave. There's Benjamin right there. You need the top hat, Dave. This is your top hat. You're the guy that gets to wear the top hat. You're the one that starts all this. Okay, does everybody know the players now? You guys can sit down. Martha and Charles, relax. You got a long journey ahead. You need to save you up your strength and your courage. Okay? So those are the kind of players. George has told you about some other ones. In 1860, Henry Wilton married Martha. That was the first marriage for her in 1860. In 1861, what happened? Civil War started. About a year later, in April 23rd, the Civil War started. About 2 years later, in 1863, is when Alice is born, okay? Now, the big date is May 26th, 1863. Now, I'm not going to test you on the dates, but I'm going to take you to the Christenot Mill, and if you don't know the dates, can't have to walk home. You're going to have to walk home. So. What happened on May 23rd, 1863? Not quite. Gold was discovered in Alder Gulch. That's the whole reason we're going there. So May 23rd of 1863. But December 20th, just a scant few months later, that's when Charles F. Where's Charles? Got to raise your hand. Whenever I say Charles F., raise your hand. You enlisted in the Civil War as a private, Company C, 12th Regiment in Wisconsin Regiment. So I don't know how you got to Wisconsin. You'll have to tell us that story. In May 20th of 1864, now George was trying to tell us whether BF was ahead of or behind or how he came in relationship to Charles. But we know from court documents, and most of my stuff is documented in court records, B.F. Christenot buys a hotel and bar in Summit City from Clark and Birchie for $4,000 in 1864. So he's out here sometime right when the gold rush starts, and Summit is the town up at the top of the hill, or just before we go up to the mill. It's the biggest town up the Gulch, beyond Virginia City, and for $4,000 he buys that property. Clark and Birchie figure in this story as well. So the questions become, and we should have a board here, all the questions we're going to have, because we keep getting more and more questions as we go along. 1864, the exact day, May 26, 1864, 1 year after gold was discovered, Abe Lincoln signed to change it from Idaho Territory to Montana Territory. Gold was discovered in Idaho Territory, and exactly 1 year later, Abe Lincoln made it Montana Territory. So yay, we finally made Montana. Now we're to July 22nd, 1864. We're fighting the Battle of Atlanta in the Civil War. In the Battle of Atlanta, and who is here is a Civil War vet? Buff. Okay.
Kelly.
We need somebody to study about the Battle of Atlanta, and especially in 1864, because we have a document that says Harry Wilton was killed. This is Martha's husband, was killed at the Battle of Atlanta. His death and burial was witnessed by his brother Charles Wilton. He was in Company K, 30th Illinois Regiment. Now, he's not in the Wisconsin Regiment, he's in the Illinois Regiment. And on the very same day, Charles F. Christenot was sunstruck in the line of duty near Atlanta, Georgia, in the same battle, and thereby contracted epileptic fits. And he's in Company C, 12th Infantry Regiment of Wisconsin. So on the very same day, these two people who trade wives die, or not die, but one they're injured in the Civil War. One is killed and one is sunstruck. So that we need that research. We need somebody to jump in the game there and do the Civil War stuff. October 1st of 1864, Charles's wife dies. Now Charles was married, and as we've been explained to us, has 3 children, Henry and Emma, and I forget the other one that's from the first marriage. His record shows he was detached on service until October 31st, and he was AWOL during November and December. AWOL, do you know what that means? Absent without leave? Now you Navy folks, there seem to be a lot of Navy folks, you'd know that, but you got to understand there's also some Marines in this family. And if you want to ask where they are, why, come see me afterwards. April 9th, 1865. Guess what happens then? Civil War ends. At last, the Civil War ends. Okay? July 16th, 1865. Charles F. Christenot is honorably discharged, even though he's on AWOL, at Louisville, Kentucky. He is 29. This is in 1865. He's 29. So these dates are, you see, I have him at 32 in 1866. So 29, 30. We got some errors here, but you need this description. And let's see if it fits Charles back here. His discharge record says he's 29 years old. He's 5'7". He's fair complected. He has blue eyes, dark hair, and was a carpenter upon enlistment. So we know Charles is a wood butcher. He's a carpenter, okay? But he's sunstruck, and he's going to have epileptic fits, and they're going to affect him all his life. On May 9th, and we have two separate documents from the county clerk and recorder saying that when Charles Christenot and Martha Wilton are married, that they're married at Carlisle, Clinton County, Illinois. And that's the county just a little bit east of St. Louis. And by the Justice of the Peace, H.W. Strang. Now, was Strang related to Keziah? Was that Strang, the Justice of Peace, related to Keziah, which was Charles's first wife? Don't know that yet. On June 15th of 1866, now we're moving up, we find that in the newspaper, we find 52 wagons depart Nebraska City. On board are 2 quartz mills for Frank Christenot. So from Nebraska City, about the time they're married, we have 2 wagon loads of quartz mill machinery to come to Montana. Now we're in October 1866. The journey has been made. They're coming across the country. 52 wagons with 2 quartz mills arrive in Summit City. These parties pass through Indian Territory with a train of over 100 wagons, and the savages wisely refrained from making an attack upon them. They showed a bad disposition and succeeded in stealing 1 mule. So the quartz mills got to Summit City in October 2nd, and on October 12th, Charles and Martha and Alice arrive in Alder Gulch after a 6-month journey, having traveled by ox team. Now this is all from the obituary. So now you see we have wagons coming there with the quartz mill, but did they come together? Were they on that same train? Nothing is said about Frederick and Margaret, the parents, and we know they were there. So how did they come? Did they come on that same wagon train? Did they come with the quartz mills? Well, we'll have fun. Incidentally, at this point in time, by 1866, we have all the documentation that's needed that proves that our forebear was in Montana in time to qualify for the Sons and Daughters of Montana Pioneers. And you can qualify for that, and these documents show that. So if you're interested in being a member and your kids being members, you can see me about that. Let's talk a little bit about geography. Let's talk a little bit about how they might have gotten here, because they're coming by ox train. And I say this is a history lesson because I think you need to put this in context with a map here. Can we see that pretty well? Can people read that? Does it need to be focused some? Is that better? Okay. What this is, if you can see this, here's Yellowstone Park, and here's Alder Gulch about this position, and over here is the Oregon Trail, and this is South Pass down in Wyoming, and then there's Fort Hall right about here. And there are several ways these people could come. Now you see, when gold was discovered in Montana, they didn't choose a very good place to discover it. everywhere else in the United States, transportation is such that you could go by river, the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, or whatever, and get to the goal or get to wherever you're going. Well, if you come up the Missouri River, as people did, you come to Fort Benton, and that's way up here up north, and you still have to come by wagon train down into this center here, because there's no river down in there. Or you can come by wagon train and come this direction, and then up into the gold fields, and that's a long journey. Or you could take the Bridger Trail or the Bozeman Trail toward what's now Billings, then come through the valley along the Yellowstone and cross and get into here. They said they went by oxen, so I don't think they went by the river. The Oregon Trail at this time is about 20 years old, so this is a well-traveled route. But if you wanted to take the Bozeman Trail, that's really good. That's the best route, because you see, look at the triangle here. You have a right triangle here. And what do we know about a right triangle? It takes a lot more to go over the two sides of the triangle than across the hypotenuse. And that's basically what the Bozeman Trail and the Bridger Trail does. The problem with that is the Indians really like this over here on the Bighorn. And they killed a lot of people, and that was really tough going. So people took that chance. That was kind of a rough way to go. But if you came this way, which was sure, it was about 400 miles longer. But notice this black line. Can anybody tell me what the black line is? Continental Divide. And if you look at the Continental Divide, when you come to Safeway, you have to come over the Continental Divide at South Pass, come over here to what's now down by Idaho Falls or Fort Hall, come back over and go over the divide again. You got to cross the Continental Divide twice. And believe me, when you're hauling all your world's goods and services and climbing over the mountains and passes, you sure don't want to have to climb up down too much. So that's a problem with that. So what I'm suggesting though is that they probably did that, and they probably came up the safe route, and they arrived up here at Alder Gulch at Summit, and they came over the Oregon Trail. Can we prove that? I don't know. That's some more search and some more history that we might be able to do. Okay? Any questions? Are we having fun yet? Yeah. Okay. Because this could go on and on and on. I'm going to read a couple of things. I'm going to have to read several things. Oh, we could have come, the other ways we could have come is we could have gone around the Horn and come on to San Francisco and backtracked on the Oregon Trail, or we could have gone to Portland and came back on the Mullen Trail. So there are lots of ways to do this. But I want to read a couple of things now. And Marge, are you there? Flora? Her sister recorded some stuff, and this is the closest we have of first-hand information to what Martha experienced coming across. And these are stories recorded on tape and transcribed by Georgie Thurber. Where's Georgie? Right there. And I want to read a couple of them here. One story was they kept the campfire burning all night long. It was to keep the predators and Indians and things so they weren't apt to attack and interfere if there was a big fire going. And the men would take about a 2-hour time, and then they'd wake somebody else and take a 2-hour stint of it. Remember, when you're going 6 months in a wagon train, you're camping. It's a big, long camp out. Everybody here likes to camp. You're out to KOA, aren't you? Tell me about your porta potties, and tell me about your water supplies, your electricity, your plug-ins. Of course, when they stopped at night, or at any time they had to stop, they'd always have the wagons in a circle. Gee, it sounds like genealogy. I know you've seen them in picture shows, the wagon train pictures. Of course, that was for safety's sake. And they had children, and they had cows along with them. They didn't travel every day. There were times when they'd have to stay over, and maybe they'd have a breakdown in a wagon. And if they had a good camp, or it was near a stream where they could get water, they'd wash a day and things like that. So they moved very slowly. I don't know the time, but I think it would take about 2 or 3 months to come from the east when they came to Montana. And I remember grandmother telling about on the plains, I think the vast herds of buffalo had kind of gone down a bit by then, but there would be big circles in the grass. A circle, perhaps as big as a good-sized house, but the grass looked different in that circle than it did on the other side of it. So when the wagon master explained to them that when a mother buffalo, I guess you would call it a cow buffalo, was having a calf, the other buffaloes would form a ring around her, and while she was delivering her baby, they would gallop around. This was also protection from coyotes and wolves, to keep them from molesting the mother cow as she's having her baby. You hear people say dumb animals, and I look back and think of the things I've seen animals do, I don't think they're dumb at all. So that's one of the stories that came down from Martha. Another story is that when they needed butter, and they make hot biscuits and things like that, they would skim the milk, put it in a pail, fasten the lid tight, fasten the pail to a pole under the wagon, and during the trip that day they were going over bumps and chuck holes and rocks and churn the butter. Okay? And another one, they said they usually stopped traveling in the middle of the afternoon because it took a long time to get ready for the night and evening. There were cattle, the horses, the cows, and all the things to take care of and get settled for the evening. They'd form and circle the wagon and do the chores. Some of the older children and women would go out with sacks outside the campsite and gather buffalo chips to keep the campfire burning all night. Now, if anybody doesn't happen to know what a buffalo chip is, it's dried buffalo manure. And it helped a lot. Helped them save the wood. They didn't like to camp for a night in a wooded area. That was too easy for the Indians to slip around. And so they would chop wood, put wood in their wagons, and carry it along with them. It must have been a tremendous chore to think of all those things and plan. Boy, I tell you, they had courage. And they talk about the explorers of today. You can look back and say the explorers of yesterday were great people too. Okay? So that's as close as we can come to having some, at this point, some real direct evidence or discussion of what Martha saw when they came. When they came to Montana, I need to orient you a little bit about where we are on this thing. We came up from the south on that other thing from Fort Hall into Bannock or into, there's Polar Springs from Bannock. This is over by Dillon, heading east, and there's Polar Springs. Can you see my map? And Home Park, she was there, and these dotted lines are the roads. Here's Bozeman where you are now, and the Bozeman Trail ended about here, but the road that will go on tomorrow we'll go along part of the Bozeman Trail over by Ennis. But you can see there's the Mullen Road, and you can see Diamond City and Helena, and you kind of get a sense for the country. There's Virginia City, and up Virginia City then, where we're going tomorrow, the first little town is Highland, the second Pine Grove, and the third one up at the top of the gulch is Summit. And that's where they're headed. That's where those two gold mills were going, and that's where we are quite sure that Christenots were there at that point. So that's this is out of the book, The Righteous Hangman, called Vigilante Country, 1863-64, and that's kind of a little bit earlier than what we were at. We're there at 66. Okay? Recall that gold was discovered 3 years earlier in 63. By the time they arrived, Benjamin had been there a while. Gulch had a population of 10,000. Now when you think about it tomorrow, going up there, 10,000 people, there's not a shred of wood up there in the gulch by this time. We've already had one forest fire. People said they were just burning the wood to get it out of the way. There's cabins and miners chucked everywhere. In 63, that December of 63, the vigilantes had already started to work, so that's all over by the time they get there. There's one trial of the vigilantes that they had, and that was with George Ives, and they hung him on December 21st of 1863. And the reason they hung him is because he brutally murdered a young man who sold some mules to Clark and Birchie. Now remember, Clark and Birchie owned the store in Summit, and B.F. Christenot bought the store and hotel from the Clark and Birchie in Summit. And when he bought those buildings south of Brown's store in Summit, he paid the $4,000 and some of the listing, and we have the listing what he bought in the store. 3.5 dozen dinner plates at $35, a dozen and a half soup plates at $27, one cooking stove and fixture. How much do I get for a cooking stove in Alder Gulch?
A lot,
A lot. Why?
because there was very few of them there.
Very few of them, and they're also very heavy. And freight is about 10 to 40 cents a pound. So you have a 200, 300 pound cooking stove. And I tell you what, we still, as an army and as a people, run on our stomachs, do we not? So I'd imagine one of the most valuable things you could have is a good cook stove up there to keep those hungry miners fed. So he paid $200 for that cook stove. 11 pair of blankets, $110. That's about $10 a blanket. 1 tin can, $3.50. Now I assume that's a big storage can and not a little bean can. Okay. So all these had to be freighted in, and so we go along and he buys that piece of property. In March of '64, the last person is hung in the Gulch, a fellow by the name of Joseph Slade. Now, I mentioned Joseph Slade because he was a vigilante himself, apparently. And he had been a peacekeeper or a manager, a part of the Oregon Trail, and he kept a very clean, a very trouble-free trail because he killed a lot of people. He was a pretty tough manager. Nobody dared rob his wagons or his stagecoaches. But by the time he got to Alder Gulch, whenever he got to drinking, he was a real pain in the neck. And he got so rowdy and so rough that they got sick of him up there and thought that they was going to have more trouble with bad people, so they decided to hang him. Well, the interesting part of Joseph Slade is that his father, Charles, founded Carlisle in the county seat of Clinton, Illinois. Now, where did we hear about Carlisle and Clinton County, Illinois? That's where they were married. That's where Charles and Martha started from. So here we are. This Slade father held many public offices, and he was U.S. representative of Illinois to the Congress. And this is all just east of St. Louis. So now, did the Christenots know Slade before he was hung? Did they know about Alder Gulch through those people? Where does that all tie in, or is that just a nice little coincidence? So, in December 19th of 1864, we just hung Slade in March, so now we're in 1864 now. This is a little 2 years again before our Christenots get out there. Benjamin's there. At public auction, after specified notices in front of Rockefeller and Denny's store, and I will show you where that store is or was. It's in an alley now on Jackson Street. We go right by it to go to the Gulch tomorrow. Between the hours of 9 o'clock in the forenoon and the setting of the sun, B.F. Christenot purchased the Springdale Ranch on Trail Creek. Not sure where Trail Creek is. 160 acres for $105. This property was purchased from the Joseph A. Slade estate. So they hung old Slade. Now he has an estate. His wife has to get rid of it, and B.F. Christenot obliged and paid $105 for 160 acres. I got to tell you now, B.F. was pretty slick at getting his hands on money and ladies, but not very good at keeping them. Okay. He also, in 65, he's selling property. But now this is the real interesting one. On April 4th of 1866, so now we're 1866. We're just a little bit before Charles and Martha get married. I apologize for jumping around a little. While sojourning in Philadelphia, B.F. Christenot and his wife, Janie M. George has got to tell us about Janie M. First, he's got to find out all about her. Through there and with their attorney, one Lorenzo P. Williston of Tioga County, Pennsylvania. Now, we believe Tioga County because that's where the Christenots, we got a lot of data on that. Being the parties of the first, second, and third parts, this is a quadripartite agreement, sell, are you sitting down now? Sell 87 mining properties situated in the Summit Mining District of Montana Territory for $1,120,000. Part of the properties are the Ora Cache, and that property was owned part by Nelson Story. Who is Nelson Story, you ask? Well, if you're from Bozeman, you know North Nelson's story because on the east end of town by the cemetery, he's on a horse and a statue. If you're on the front of the schools, his grandson Malcolm Story, who passed away just recently, has a statue. And if you look here, these are a list of some of the 87 mining properties, and these are all on file in the courthouse in Virginia City with the mining claim information. So those of you who want to spend a lot of hours up in the Gulch, we can go find out where these are. And these are being sold to B.F. Christenot. And each one of these, here's B.F. Christenot's name. And if you look down here, about right there is End Story. And this is the Ora Cache. So one of the richest properties up in the Gulch at one point was owned by Nelson Story and Benjamin Christenot. So now Nelson Story was very famous because he brought the first longhorn cattle herd north to Montana. You talk about the shades of Lonesome Dove, Nelson Story was the guy that did that. You talk about what else he did. He came to Bozeman then. He had Story Hills up here. He had the mills, had milling operations. He's smarter than Benjamin. He took his money and went to Los Angeles, a little community somewhere down in California, and he built a couple of office buildings down in the center of town down there and died an extremely wealthy man. And one of the buildings in downtown Los Angeles was called the Story Building, and he had another building besides. We're not done with Nelson's story. We have another story to tell about that a little bit later. Okay? Benjamin does some other things, but I'm going to leap ahead just while we're thinking about Benjamin. On October 11th of 1873, now I'm skipping up ahead to 1873, B.F. and his wife Azuba sell lots 1, 2, and 3 of block 199 of the plat. And down that plat I marked in yellow on that one map over there to the left. But here now Azuba is the second wife. We don't know what happened to Janie to the first wife, but now we've got Benjamin with the second wife, and we all know that he has at least one other wife. Okay? So, we have some documents that we could go, and I think I'm going to skip over them, but there's a book called Bride on the Bozeman Trail. And this is a lady named Ellen Fletcher. And she came across in 1866 and wrote a diary and described, and when she got to Virginia City, she went up to Summit. And she lived for several months in Summit. So we have a first-hand description of what Summit looks like if we'd at some point like to read through that. It's a very good story. Okay? Well, let's see, what can we talk about now? Let's go to the crux of what we really want to do here. This is the important part. You should all have a copy of this in, I think in the handout, if you bought those handouts. This drawing was made in about August or September of 1867. We know at this point, and I have the documents to show, because Charles Christenot filed a mechanics lien against the Montana Gold and Silver Mining Company. Remember the 87 properties that got bought by Montana Gold and Silver Mining in the Summit District. Summit is over the hill, over this hill right here. This is what's called Union City. We'll talk a lot about Union City. This is where we want to go tomorrow. This is the mill right here. What you will see tomorrow at the mill is where this stairway went up and connected into an opening in the wall. The directions here, this is north. This end of the building or annex is north, east, west, south. This shed roof, which we call the office, is still there. You can see the smokestack and see where the boilers were. The depression is where this house is where you'll turn your car around. This set of depressions where these little cabins are still visible in the ground. They're about 12 to 14 feet wide, and you can walk across Spring Creek, just a little step over the stones to get there and get to these houses and see where those were. This is called Lincoln Boulevard. This is called Grant Hill. Why are we calling these Lincoln and Grant? What do you suspect's going on in Union City? Well, let's talk about Virginia City a minute. How did Virginia City get its name? Well, it turns out that all of the rebel people, excuse me for the southern people here that are amongst our family, pretty much settled in Virginia City, and they wanted to name it. They were going to name it after Jefferson Davis's wife, called Marina. But the judge who had to sign off and send this into Washington said, hell no, we're not going to call it after a rebel deal. He had to be a unionist. So he changed it to Virginia. So now we have a Virginia City, Nevada, and a Virginia City, Montana. What's the difference between those two besides geography? One is silver and one is gold. Virginia City, Nevada was a silver mining capital or place. This is a gold mining capital. So the Union people pretty much came up into this part of the northern part of the gulch, or not the northern part, but the summit part of the gulch. This is the Oracash Hill. Houses, or these houses, are the head frame for the Oracash, the very rich mine. These are the skid trails where they brought ore down, and you can see them tomorrow. You can see the adits, or horizontal tunnels going in, and this is the U.S. General Grant is somewhere in this. That's the mine there. There's a U.S. General Grant. And they were trying to dig into this. They did, and they took gold out of here and milled it in this mill, as well as they took gold out of the Oracash. And that mill came there in 1866 in the fall. So they put it in the mill and started the mill running, and tried to get it running in the winter, and in 1867 is when they really started to do the gold mining. Now, getting back to the mechanics lien, Charles Christenot, our Charles. So Charles, are you still here? You awake? You're still here. You must be pretty tired because you're a miner at this point, and you have, in your mechanics lien, told them that you worked 121 and a half days on the mill, making tubs, sleds, getting out wood. There's 500 cords of wood laying around here that you got out. You worked on the houses for the manager. You worked on houses for B.F. Christenot. You had an account at the company store, and they owed you $1,300, but you spent $700 or $800, and so they owed you $500 or $600, and you sued for it. And by gosh, it turns out when you sued for that, we had to find out all about the kind of things that you bought and the kind of work that you did. And you worked on the irrigation ditches. And believe me, none of these things run unless they have water. They've got to have some water in the system. The court gave you a jury trial, and you won that, but they appealed it. Montana Gold and Silver Mining appealed it. Went to the Supreme Court of the Territory of Montana in 1868. By God, you won. And now you got $400. Are you happy? Okay, good. Well, that all happened right here. And so we do know at that time that Charles and Martha were here. And we also know that in November of '66, a month after they got there, Charles got some account, borrowed some money at that store. That's in November. Now we come to the Hattie Christenot line. How do we get Hattie Christenot? Martha, you were pregnant coming across. It's now March of '67. You're going to have a baby. It's going to be named Hattie. In March of '67, the story on our side of the family is that Hattie is the first white girl born in Alder Gulch. Well, there's pretty good evidence that we could narrow that down and say at least in this part of Alder Gulch she's probably the first. Not only that, we know that they were in this area. They had to be here. All that evidence in the mechanics lien, and it's in the middle of winter. It's 7 miles down on a real crummy toll road. In fact, it's so cold that the woman who lived up here with her husband, the millwright being the person who keeps the mill running, died and pointed over here in the hillside and asked to be buried. Nancy Millsop Wright. And her grave is there, and you'll see that. And she died there. Their family says 69, but another book we have, A.K. McClure, says it's in 67, something like that. So Hattie's born right here. So I can say almost with certainty, as much as I can be certain at this point, that our forebear Hattie was born on this hillside somewhere in this little acre of place. And not only that, in those records, we know Charles's father, Frederick Christenot, and Charles and his mother, Margaret, at least, shouldn't say his mother, to be honest, we have to say that Frederick Christenot and his wife, Margaret, are here in this area too. So we have lots of Christenots at this mill, and they call this the Christenot Mill. Today it's known by the people in the Gulch as the Spring Gulch Mill, because this is called Spring Gulch, but I have more than enough evidence to say that this was the Christenot Mill. It gets sold several times, but it's the Christenot Mill. Okay? Let me just say a little more about the mill while we're looking at this slide. This is the mill. About 2 weeks ago, we measured it. This is about a scale of 1/8 inch to 1 foot. It was drawn by the cameraman standing here. Jason, can you raise your hand? Yep, there's my son Jason. He's an outstanding student of a Christenot named Judy Christenot. One of her best students, I'm sure. Okay. Jason drew this up for us, and what you can see there is pretty much the outline. This wall is pretty well gone. These walls are here. This big opening, if it still exists, and a window. There's some bolts and a stone structure where it looks like an engine may have been bolted. The smokestack in that one drawing that you have pictures of sticks up about here. And this mill had 4 Chilean rollers. And these are the Chilean rollers. And if you look down on a set of wheels and envision that the wheels go round and round and round, and I'll show you another picture of it. They are right here with 16 barrel amalgamators. And those are horizontal barrels, like a 55-gallon drum, with a 6-inch, this is heavy stuff now, there's a 6-inch shaft that cradles, that each one of these things cradles in for these barrels, as Jason has indicated. So we have 16 barrel amalgamators. The idea is that the ore is brought in down the hill, gravity working for us, put into the crusher, the big old stone wheels crush it, and then the amalgamators mix with mercury, and they can mix the mercury in here as well, get the gold and mercury together into a solution. Then they later heat that, retort it, and get the gold and recover the mercury. And right outside on this corner of the mill, you'll find a little structure that I think is where the retort was, because there's some big heavy pieces of metal there, like for a fire. Now I'd like to caution you folks tomorrow, we're trying to get this on the National Historic Register. And one of the things that we do not do tomorrow is take anything but pictures and memory. This is not a souvenir hunt to go up there. We want to leave everything that's there. And that packet that you got when you registered, we asked you for $1, details, all these details of gold that came out of here, of construction, of a whole bunch of stuff. And we're going to use that packet as start of the basis to get that on the National Historic Register. And this area, this land, the Bureau of Land Management is trying to get into a wilderness area. The building does need some stabilization, and once we're done up there, if you feel so inclined, we may want to talk about some family donations, because BLM will do a matching with us in terms of stabilizing, putting a fence around it to keep the cattle out. There's some things we might do to help preserve it. Put signs up on it. Of course, I want to see a sign that says Christenot Mill on it. I think that's what we really need to have done. Okay, the Chilean roller, oops, shouldn't turn that off. The Chilean roller looks something like this. This is a Chilean roller that exists in the Gulch. See the big wheel? And then there's a ratchet or help me with the word, gears or cogs that will turn this whole thing around. This is much, much larger than what would be in the Christenot mill, much, much larger than what wagons would bring across. The same principle. This gentleman here is John Ellingson, who is the curator for Bowie collection that works out of the Virginia and Nevada City, showed me this. It never ran. They tested it, they ground some gold, but as in so many cases, they mined the investors. They got this thing established up here and never processed any gold. But a Chilean roller then rolls around and around the circle with big heavy wheels, just like the Chileans thresh the grain down in Chile, and that's how it got the name of the Chilean roller. Okay? Well, let's talk a little bit more. Maybe I should, got two stories a couple of little stories I want to show. Do we believe that Margaret Christenot was at that time? The date on this is, there's the signature of the manager or the agent for the Montana Gold and Silver Mines, A.K. McClure. I need to talk about him. This is Mrs. Margaret Christenot for one day, a promissory note. And a promissory note is what? No collateral. I'll just revenue stamps. $100 on this one, and the other note up here I think was $250. So she lent to them some money, the mill, to get it to run. And Mrs. Margaret Christenot, and that's the wife of Frederick. We talked about mechanics lien. Let me tell you, reading the records of all of these people, they did not have word processors in the courthouse at that time. This is what they had in the courthouse at that time, handwritten documents. And it's really tough to read. 1867, here's information and I've typed this all up, so it's in some of the documents that you have. Here's, he got cash for $15, he got some salt, he got a box of something here. Here's the 121 half days of work. Read it better up there than I can. Order from B.F. Here it says order from B.F. Christenot for work done, $70. So you see that they're up there working together, and I think it's there's without doubt that they were there. So he won the suit. But what did he do with the suit? Now somebody over here has one of the descendants has the autograph album, or what they used to have autograph books, and they have signatures of Martha and Charles. Here's another signature of Charles. And what he did, he said, for the consideration of the sum of $200 to me paid, the receipt whereof is acknowledged, I hereby assign to Frederick Christenot all of my right, title, and interest to a certain judgment in the Montana Gold and Silver Mining Company in favor of Charles Christenot for $400 and some. So he goes to his father and he says, Dad, I'm broke. Give me $200 and you can have the judgment and you'll soon get $400 for it. But somehow or another, when he got done winning that lawsuit for his $400, he sold the interest in it to his father, Frederick, for $200. Okay. One other story that I think I need to tell you about, and I'm trying to make this a little bit brief because we've got a long day tomorrow, and a lot of this stuff and information about the mine are in those sheets that I gave you. We know that I want to read about A.K. Christenot. I want to read a story here. I need to read this story about Union City. This is A.K. McClure. Let me talk a little about A.K. McClure. Has anybody seen the book or heard of the book called 3,000 Miles Through the Rocky Mountains? Colonel A.K. McClure came out as an agent for the Montana Gold and Silver Mining Company. He was a Union colonel. He owned a newspaper back east, and he wrote a whole series of letters back to his newspaper. He's a very flowery writer. And he talks about mining, and he talks about a lot of things. He talks about Union City. And he said, Union City, the place where I am celebrating the natal day of the Republic, 4th of July, this is 1867. Although bearing the dignified title of a city, has not as yet found a place on the map of the country, and is quite probable that the urchins of future generations will be flogged through schools in blissful ignorance of its existence. I did not know about it. I went through school in blissful ignorance. I didn't know about Union City. It consists of 5 gigantic mountain spurs or bluffs, forming a complete circle with the exception of the narrow passage of Spring Gulch. And the bottom of the hopper, but a few hundred feet in width, nestles a quartz mill, the Christenot Mill, and a dozen of the rudest pole cabins. Winding ravines, etc., fill the gulch. Our little mountain city has no hotel, no restaurant, no sideboards, no flasks to tempt the patriotic from their path of sobriety. Beyond the innocent game of quoits, does anybody know what quoits is? What's quoits? Darts? Yeah, it's kind of a ring toss game. Yeah, a round ring toss game. Okay? Beyond the innocent game of quoits, it has no amusements to break in upon the industry of the state inhabitants. Here are the inhabitants: 40 men, 4 ladies, 3 children, 5 cats, 3 dogs, 4 pigeons, 3 horses, 6 oxen, and densely crowded suburbs of gophers, a species of ground squirrel, make up the population of this modest city of mountains, and 1 green grave on the hillside of a loved and lamented wife. That's the grave we're talking about. Nancy Millsop Wright. This is 1867. 4 ladies. Who are the ladies? Well, maybe Millsop Wright was still one of the ladies, or she just passed away. We know Margaret's there. We know Martha's there. So that's half the population. The ladies must be Christmas. Okay? One other thing he says is a sturdy he talks about the population. Nearly every leading nation of the world is here represented. The sturdy Cornishman, the imperturbable Welshman, the impetuous son of France, the quiet Swede, and the wandering Swiss. Now, all the time that I've ever heard of people describe about Irish coming and all these people coming, I always hear about, I never hear them talk about Swiss going anywhere. But that's where we're from, is Switzerland, right? So there's a Swiss connection. Okay? Now we have a real interesting conjunction story. A story still by A.K. McClure, and this is a story about Union City, and it talks about Virginia City and so on. It says, of the 6 mills in this section, of the Summit section, that of the Montana Gold and Silver Mining Company is the only one that suspends operation on Sunday. They didn't work the Christenot Mill on Sunday. Such a thing as a sermon I've never heard nor heard of since I've been in Union City. Now he goes on and talks about a family that's going to leave. And this is really an interesting story. And Alice, I don't know if Alice has red hair or not, but we have to find out about Alice. 2 bright-faced little girls, 1 rollicking boy, and 1 infant constitute the children of the town. And one of them drew tears from eyes, unused to the melting mood, as she twined her little arms about our necks from house to house and kissed us all a long goodbye. She was the fairest and most fragile flower in the mountains. When she came to gladden the little cabin on the hillside, she was tried in the scales, and the needle quivered at the figure of 3, if unwilling to fix that low standard in a little lump of mortality. So it's a little 3-pound baby when she first came. He says 5 years ago, but gold was not even discovered in all our gold 5 years ago. Anyway, this little girl, lovely and affectionate in disposition, was beautiful and fastidious in her dress as her most cultivated Eastern sister. She was bright as a sunbeam wherever she wandered, and the horny hand of toil would steal a fond caress as she tripped along. Each day I claimed and received a portion of her companionship, and I only knew how much I prized her daily prattling when she was about to start for the States. She's going home, the family's leaving. She knew no home but Union City, and to her the whole world was embraced with 5 mountain cliffs which shut us in from even the sight of habitation or the evidence of fellowship. She had already passed a severe ordeal of her aunties and grandmothers when she reached me. Her soft blue eyes were flooded, and she gave me her last embrace and kiss, and promised as usual to come again to see me tomorrow day. So this is a little 5-year-old girl. I gave her my best equipage, a brace of sober oxen and a homely cart for her journey to the coach office, and there were many longing looks and tender regrets as a slow but steady cortege passed around Lincoln Avenue to disappear beyond the bluff beyond. Remember the Christenot Mill, and I said Lincoln Avenue, and it goes around the hill. He lent her a cart to go down to the coach office from Virginia City. It's getting better, folks, bear with me. Strong men, long used to rugged mountain life, leaned upon their picks and spades as little Eva passed from among them, and thought more of home than they dared to tell. Now are you ready? Alice. Alice. Is Alice here? Alice, her only companion, was bowed in inconsolable grief, her red disheveled hair. George, you got to find out whether she had red hair or not. Locks streamed in the air, and her sobs broke painfully upon us all as she followed her playmate until the last farewell was given, when she sought the child's last refuge from the grief in a hearty cry. It seemed as if the sun had gone out to perpetual darkness. Alice is a bright wave with more than a common share of nature's better quality, and she floats down life's unseen current with a smile and a kind heart for all. We all have a persistent difference in our theology, as she insists that her Aunt Mary was her creator, while I have maintained we all have a common and infinite author of our being. So now, folks, we know Martha's there. We know that there's an infinite there. That's got to be Hattie. We know Martha has a daughter named Alice. How much of a reach do we have to make to say that this is our Alice? Her age is right. Companion of a girl that's about 3 or 4 years old or 5 years old. Not many kids up in that gulch. I think that's a fascinating piece of history to conjecture on. I can't prove that, but then we can't prove there's a difference at this point. Okay? So here's what happens. Christenot's mine, they get into lawsuits. Benjamin lends money to Montana, the gold and silver mine. He's supposed to have $1 million. Why is he worried about a paltry $10,000? Well, he sues Montana gold and silver mining to get $10,000 back on a promissory note and wins. So they have to start selling off all the mining properties, and we have records of that, and I think you have copies of it. So in the 70s, then, they leave up there. The gold kind of is disappearing. Turns out that the gold is tougher and tougher to get as you go deeper. That's contrary to the California and Colorado experience. The deeper you go, the more gold you get. In Montana, most of the gold was on the surface. So Christenot, Charles Christenot, gets himself into another lawsuit with Curtis Newberry. Curtis Newberry turns out to be Alice's husband. Curtis Newberry marries Alice Wilton. It claims, Christenot claims, Charles claims, they were in freighting business together, that he bought part of a freighting outfit, that they logged together, they hauled coal together, they built a bridge at Fuller Springs for James Fuller, they put a room on a tavern. He claimed all of those things, but he didn't have a good enough lawyer. Turns out that Newberry had a better lawyer, apparently. And when it all ended up, is Christenot didn't win the lawsuit in 1870. And when about that time, he wrote and asked for his discharge papers from his daughter Emma, and she wrote back, this is a letter that George had mentioned. Dear Papa, I received your letter last Monday and was truly glad to hear from you, but also sorry to hear of your misfortune in losing everything. Then she goes on and talks about her wedding. So I conclude that it's that lawsuit because Charles also thought he was the manager of a ranch. He was raising his own grain, And on the bottom of the one map over here that's in yellow, the one that's hanging way down, is the range and quarter section of where the Christenot Newberry ranch was supposed to be. And there even still says on that map, Newberry Ditch. And that's all by Polar Springs on the Ruby River. And we want to drive up. We won't go to that place tomorrow, but we will go to Polar Springs tomorrow, those that would like to. Okay? What else can I talk about? Let me talk about a little bit more about Charles. Charles died in 1866. And his epilepsy got worse and worse. And as Dave was telling me with heat stroke, it's a mental process and things get worse. When he dies, Martha is left destitute. Of course, what does Martha do? Not long after he dies, a couple of years, she marries Benjamin. What happened to Benjamin's wife, Azuba? She was a smith. I found out where they were married in Virginia City. There was also a daughter there. There was another Christenot girl in Virginia City that we need to talk about. I don't know where she fits in, but she was there, a friend of, in the family, was of the family. So, Martha marries BF, but BF leaves the country. Never more to be heard again. So now we know that he's got 3 wives. We know that he had all of this gold and lost it, all of these things. But this tells a lot about Charles Christenot in his later life. It's a general affidavit from Adriel B. Davis. Now this affidavit's filed in the court in 1903 before a notary public. And it says that Mr. Davis first saw Charles F. Christenot in the fall of 1866, about 1 year after his discharge from the U.S. Army, and that thereafter until March 1886, when said Christenot was sent to the Montana State Asylum, said Davis, oh man, if you think legalese is tough now, you gotta try to read these in handwriting. When said Davis was with him much of the time, and was at all times closely acquainted with him and his condition and affairs, and that he, said Davis, had been closely acquainted with comrades and associates of said Christenot while in the U.S. Army, who have often related in Christenot's presence the circumstances attending epileptic affliction of said Christenot while in said Army service, that I have seen said Christenot have as many as 50 fits, more or less. So now we learn a piece of information. A lot of Christenot friends and comrades from the war were out there, because as Davis met him out there, and they talked about all of these fits. That said Christenot during the following year and thereafter till his death had epileptic fits varying intervals, that such fits increased in frequency and intensity as he grew older, that I saw him have light fits in which he would only stagger and afterwards appear to be mentally affected. And as the years progressed, he would fall and show all signs of epilepsy, and finally he was mentally deranged and was considered dangerous to the safety of his family and others. In the fall of 1880, I was with said Christenot when he had a fit in which he fell about 10 o'clock a.m. and did not become rational until after 4 o'clock p.m. At a later date, I have seen him have 2 fits in the same day and did not become rational again before he retired at night at 10 o'clock p.m. The physical condition of said Christenot deteriorated rapidly with his mental condition and was not due to his age. I have known other epileptics and am acquainted with the symptoms and progress of the disease. Ariel B. Davis. Remember I talked about George Ives? George Ives was the first one hung. They gave him a trial. Ariel B. Davis was a vigilante. Ariel B. Davis was the guy that made the noose that went around George Ives' neck. Ariel B. Davis was the guy when the rope was too long and when Ives' feet would reach the ground, he couldn't die. So he shittied up the pole, tied the rope tighter, so the next time they dropped George Ives, it'd break his neck and hang him. So this vigilante was a personal friend, apparently, of Christenot in all those years, and in 1903 filled out an affidavit from Martha. So Martha then is in all kinds of trouble, and we have records of her applying for pensions, both from Wilton, both from Charles Christenot, because she married Benjamin again, she had to give up the children so they could get their pension. So then they had to get guardians, and they got a guy by the name of J.H. Davis to be her guardian, the kids' guardian. And these were George's guardians and Fred's guardian and all the younger kids who had the guardian. And finally, she lives in Home Park. We find her in 02 living in Pony. 1909, she's living in Weed. And Ken here has a picture of her cabin. In 13, she withdraws a homestead application. And in 23, she dies at John Kyle's home in Whitehall. And so we end up then with Martha having a real tough life after Charles died. When she died, she had 52 grand, 46 great, and three great-great-grandchildren. So now if you want to get off the hill at Alder Gulch tomorrow, you have to tell me who were the three great-great-grandchildren that died, or not died, that she had when she died in 1923. That's got to be a good question for George. He's the guy that's got all of the data. Okay. I'm going to finish up here with one more little story. Do you remember? This is another mystery. Sunday, March 7th, 1948. Do you remember in the Bozeman Chronicle here in Bozeman? Frank Christenot was a well-known Gallup County pioneer who was associated with North Nelson Story, Sr. in mining operations at Virginia City and elsewhere. He was one of the first settlers of Salesville and lived a mile downriver from that community. Gallup Gateway is Salesville. You're at Four Corners. It's toward Yellowstone Park, what, 5 miles? So-called Benjamin Christenot supposed to be a pioneer there. The silk hat, wished it were silk, he was wearing in that picture was a distinguishing mark of a gentleman back in the late 1860s and predominated pictures of pioneers of those days. I have no evidence anywhere of B.F. Christenot in Salesville. I've been to the court, and I haven't gotten the land records, but I've been to the museum here, both at the college and at the local museum, and I can find no record of him being in Salesville. But that picture was put in the paper is the picture of which there are 2 copies in Nelson Story's photo album. And in that photo album, Nelson Story's son said, "My father related to me, Benjamin Christenot, was a friend, a pioneer, and a miner. And he took a small valise of gold roller samples to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and met complete strangers, unknown people to him, and talked them into $75,000, which he used to start in mining in Virginia City, and it was all lost in mining." So that's a connection there that how he got started, some idea. We have one final thing I'd have to say is that Charles, a Civil War veteran, a carpenter, a miner, a freighter, a farmer, a builder, a pioneer. Martha, certainly a survivor, a mother and a pioneer. One of the stories there's one more story that I'd like to read about her. There was this thing, not a story really, but about a pin or a brooch, I guess you would call it, that my grandmother had. And it was very precious to her, and we all admired it and liked it. And I've often wondered what happened to it. Anyway, the center of the pin was an agate. Usually there was some kind of picture on an agate, but I don't remember what this one was. It was quite a good-sized agate. And around the edge of the agate was a gold band. At the bottom were 3 diamond-shaped gold pendants, and the gold was engraved, kind of a little scroll around it. And the reason why grandmother was so proud of it, grandfather had found the agate, and he had also plastered for the gold. So he had bruised everything that made the pin, which made it just doubly precious. Now, Aunt Norma talks about that pin, and says how it got lost. It got put into a trunk when Martha died. The trunk was supposed to be all of Martha's things to be saved for George Christenot, and it was a Renova, and the trunk disappeared. But I think if you look at the pictures of Martha, and I think in the blue handout and some of the other pictures we have, you can see a round pin with at least 2 pendants on it. And I'd have to guess again that that's probably that pendant. So Benjamin Christenot, well, developer, married 3 times, promoter, disappeared. Was he a con man? Was he a hell of a miner? Was he a good businessman? What was he? Where is he? Somebody go find him. He left here, went somewhere. Did he have some more wives? Frederick and Margaret, they were out here, they were pioneers. Frederick died somewhere, Butte, I think, we think. We know, we don't know where Margaret died. She was in Adobe Town at one point in the census. And of course, then all of us, we have all kinds of stories to tell as well. So that's a little walk through history. Anybody has any questions or any comments? The mic's open here for some time to visit about these things and ask questions.
Before everybody breaks up and starts going different places, we'd like to get each family group over here in the corner and take pictures of the parents, their children, their grandchildren, who they have. If we could get you for just a few minutes, get a picture of you, and then we can put some of these pictures in these albums together.
Okay, I'd like to say one final thing then. Tomorrow, we will be taking a trip to Olive Gulch. We want to leave about 7:45. That means meeting in front of the elevated blue bus in front of the KOA at 7:30. The blue handout that we prepared for you has the mileage. It tells you about some things as we go over. We'll meet in Virginia City about 9, and then we'll have to ferry people to the mill. Then we need to go to Polar Springs. I didn't talk a lot about Polar Springs. There's some Indian stories there, some Christenot stories about Polar Springs and the Indians, and some other history. And then those that want to, we can go on around to Martha's grave down by Whitehall in the South Boulder. That'll be a long day. You can drop out at any point that you want to, but as I understand it, go in and George help me tomorrow night. The catered dinner is at KOA. What time? Gwen, are you asleep, Gwen?
What time's the dinner tomorrow night?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock dinner, so we need to be back tomorrow night at KOA for the 7 o'clock dinner. Okay? Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, before you guys start breaking, let me just get some of these families together over here and we'll get the pictures taken. Those that are in the picture, if you got a camera, you want somebody to take a picture, just bring it over here, we'll get the picture at the same time. Orville, did we get you and your family? I know you got a bunch of grandchildren and everybody else. We can get you over here to start with.
Yes, it is, Amy.
Good. Okay, well, we got 2. We got Cameron and Bobby that got birthdays today, so let's go ahead and say them a happy birthday. Look at who's in the choir over there. Who's in the choir today?
Marjorie, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bobby. Happy birthday to you.
Before we shut the mic off, there was a couple of items that I wanted to bring up. I've had several people ask me if it's possible to get some more t-shirts or the Henley shirts or caps. I was told that if I had an order of 12 or more, I could get them for the same price. So I have a sign-up sheet on the back table there. If you would like to order some other shirts or caps, please sign up back there. I have the shirts and their prices and sizes listed. Also, we are going to need some 4-wheel drive vehicles to transport people up to the Christenot mill. If you are able to provide one of those vehicles, And we'll be taking them up in groups, probably we'll divide you up into 3 different groups. Take one group up at a time. And we need some 4-wheel drive vehicles to do that. If you have one and are able to do that, there's a sign-up sheet on the back table.